You think you can play? That old thing? You're a joke. Just give me 1 minute. One note. Ilara, a young woman whose spirit was as resilient as the worn keys of the grand piano she adored, watched her community's heart, the historic Harmony Hall, threatened by the ruthless ambition of a powerful developer. When he dared to mock her dreams, her talent, and her desperate plea to save their heritage, he underestimated the quiet fire within her. What he didn't know was that Ilara possessed a gift, a profound connection to the very soul of music, a melody that, with a single resonant note, would not only silence his contempt, but awaken a sleepy town, ignite a movement, and ultimately challenge the very foundations of power, proving that the most profound justice often begins with the simplest, purest sound. This is a story of how one girl, one piano, and one unwavering spirit can transform despair into an anthem of hope, healing old wounds and forging an unbreakable bond within a community on the brink. Now, before we dive deeper, please subscribe to our channel. We share powerful, meaningful stories like this every day, and drop a comment below to let us know where you're watching from. Thank you so much. And now, let's get back to the story. You think you can play? That old thing? You're a joke. Just give me 1 minute. One note. The silence in Harmony Hall was suffocating, broken only by the creak of old floorboards under Randall Thorne's Italian leather shoes. He stood on the raised stage, a predatory smile playing on his lips, gesturing towards the architectural renderings projected onto the dusty velvet curtains. They depicted a gleaming glass and steel monolith, a stark contrast to the century-old grandeur around them. This, he declared, was the future of Harmony Creek. Ilara stood among the hushed faces of her neighbors, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. The faded grandeur of Harmony Hall, with its sweeping balconies and the ghosts of countless performances, felt more real, more alive, than the sterile images Thorne paraded. This was where her grandmother, Evelyn Hayes, had first taught her to coax melodies from a forgotten upright, where the community had gathered for every joy and sorrow. It wasn't just a building, it was the town's very soul, now laid bare and vulnerable. Her earlier plea had been heartfelt, a raw expression of their collective history, of the music that still echoed in the very walls. "This hall isn't just bricks and mortar," she'd said, her voice shaking but steady. "It's the rhythm of our lives, the heart of Harmony Creek. My grandmother, Evelyn, she always said music was the glue that held us together. Tearing it down isn't just development, it's tearing out our roots." Thorne, however, was impervious to sentiment. He'd chuckled, a dry, grating sound. "Nostalgia is a charming concept, Miss Hayes," he'd sneered, adjusting his tie. "But charm doesn't pay the bills. Progress does. And frankly, this heritage of yours is an eyesore, a liability." He'd then turned his gaze to the grand piano, its mahogany finish dull with age, center stage. "Unless you think playing a little tune on that relic will somehow magically reverse the economic realities of Harmony Creek?" His voice dripped with condescension. That was when the words had just come, instinctual, desperate. "You think you can play? That old thing? You're a joke. Just give me 1 minute. One note." A ripple went through the small crowd. They knew Ilara, knew her quiet strength, her deep love for the hall. But they also knew the odds. Randall Thorne, a man whose empire was built on concrete and contempt, was not easily swayed by the simple beauty of Harmony Creek's past. He merely raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on his lips. A minute? A note? Darling, this isn't a talent show. This is a very serious business proposal to revitalize a dying town. Our town isn't dying, Mr. Thorne, Ilara retorted, her voice gaining a surprising clarity. It's being suffocated by people who only see profit, not people, not history, not hope. She glanced at the piano, the old Mason and Hamlin, a silent monarch that had presided over generations of Harmony Creek's joys and sorrows. It had stood here for generations, witnessed laughter, tears, triumphs, and heartbreaks. It had been her grandmother's confidant, her own first teacher. Ilara remembered Evelyn's fingers dancing across those very keys, transforming simple chords into stories that filled the expansive room. Every scratch, every worn patch on the veneer held a whisper of those memories. Thorne, clearly enjoying the public spectacle, waved a hand dismissively. Very well, indulge the girl. Let's see your hope. But don't expect miracles. You play your note, and then we conclude this meeting with the real decision. He folded his arms, clearly expecting a pathetic performance, a final, futile gesture. His gaze swept over the weary faces in the audience, the town council members, the small business owners, the retirees, all worn down by years of economic struggle, now clinging to Ilara's slim promise. He saw defeat in their eyes, a sentiment he intended to exploit. Every eye in the hall was on Ilara as she slowly, deliberately, walked towards the stage. The light from the high, arched windows caught dust motes dancing in the air, making the scene feel dreamlike, a moment suspended in time. She felt the weight of her community's yearning on her shoulders, their desperate hope a tangible force pushing her forward. Their livelihoods, their memories, their future, it all rested on the fragile promise of 1 minute, one note. The air crackled with anticipation, a desperate, unspoken prayer from every person present. Her fingers, usually so confident on the keys, trembled slightly as she reached the piano. It was an old friend, scarred by time but still proud. She ran a hand over the smooth, cool wood, a silent prayer echoing in her soul. Evelyn's words resonated in her mind, a comforting melody. Ilara, music isn't just about the sound. It's about the story it tells, the feeling it awakens. It's about reaching into someone's soul. Her grandmother had taught her that every note carried a history, a memory, a fragment of human experience. This wasn't just about showing off. It was about speaking for a town that had lost its voice. Taking a deep, anchoring breath, Ilara settled onto the worn velvet of the piano bench. The fabric was thin, threadbare in places, just like the community's dwindling resources. She positioned her hands, fingers hovering over the yellowed ivory keys, each one a testament to countless hours of practice, of joy, of sorrow. The hall was absolutely silent now. Thorne stood at the edge of the stage, his gaze condescending, a picture of impatient superiority, his expensive watch ticking a rhythmic judgment against the heavy quiet. Ilara closed her eyes for a fleeting second, not in fear but in profound concentration, seeking that deep well of resolve her grandmother had instilled in her. She wasn't just playing a note. She was channeling generations of Harmony Creek's spirit, the whispers of her grandmother's melodies, the silent cries of a town on the brink. Her eyes opened, fixed on a single key, middle C, a note so fundamental, so pure, it was often overlooked. A slow, deliberate breath. Her finger descended. The single note, middle C, when Ilara's finger finally descended, was not just a sound. It was a tremor that ran through the very bones of Harmony Hall, a deep, pure vibration that seemed to ripple through the air, across the worn stage, and into the chests of every person present. It wasn't loud, not jarring, but incredibly potent. It held the quiet authority of an ancient truth, echoing the countless melodies that had filled this space for generations. It hummed, rich and full, a physical presence in the room, carrying with it the whisper of Evelyn's laughter, the murmur of first dances, the solemnity of farewells. For a fleeting moment, the hall wasn't just old, it was alive, breathing with the memories it housed. Randall Thorne's dismissive smirk faltered. His eyes, usually cold and calculating, widened almost imperceptibly. He tilted his head, as if straining to identify a forgotten chord, a memory he couldn't quite place but somehow recognized. The note lingered, long after Ilara's finger had lifted, an echo in the quiet spaces of the heart. Then, as suddenly as it had come, Thorne snapped out of it, his face hardening, a mask of irritation replacing his momentary bewilderment. He scoffed, a forced, theatrical sound. "Well, isn't that quaint?" he sneered, clapping his hands together once, sharply. "A single note. My apologies, Miss Hayes, but I fail to see how a solitary tone, however resonant, addresses the pressing need for economic revitalization in Harmony Creek." He gestured impatiently to his projected renderings. Now, if we could move beyond the charming, if ultimately unproductive, theatrics. But the people of Harmony Creek weren't looking at Thorne anymore. Their eyes, once filled with a quiet desperation, now held something new, a flicker of hope, a spark of defiance. Mrs. Gable, the elderly owner of the town's only bakery, dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. Young Michael, who swept the floors at the hardware store, looked at Ilara with an awe that transcended his usual shyness. The note had stirred something within them, a collective memory, a shared pride that Thorne's ruthless logic couldn't touch. It was a reminder of who they were, of what they stood to lose. Ilara felt it too, a warmth spreading through her veins, a surge of adrenaline that quelled her fear. Her grandmother's words came to her, clear as a bell. "Some truths don't need a symphony, Ilara. Just one honest note can change everything." She looked at Thorne, her gaze steady. "It addresses the heart, Mr. Thorne, something your blueprints seem to have forgotten to include." Thorne's jaw tightened. He wasn't accustomed to being challenged, especially not by a young woman clinging to a broken-down piano. He strode to the projector, his movements sharp and deliberate. "The heart doesn't sign contracts, Miss Hayes. The heart doesn't create jobs. The heart doesn't build a prosperous future." He clicked a button, and the image on the screen changed from the gleaming monolith to a legal document, its pages dense with fine print. "This," he announced, his voice regaining its chilling confidence, "is the signed agreement between Thorne Developments and the current ownership of Harmony Hall. We have purchased the property. The demolition permit is already approved, effective in 2 weeks." A collective gasp went through the audience. 2 weeks. It was a death sentence. The fragile hope ignited by Ilara's note flickered, threatening to extinguish in the harsh light of Thorne's legal reality. Whispers erupted, fearful and defeated. "No, that can't be right." Mayor Thompson, a kind but often indecisive man, stammered, his face paling. "We were still negotiating the terms of the Community Preservation Clause." Thorne turned, a cold smile on his lips. "The terms were clear, Mayor. A significant portion of the old building was deemed structurally unsound and economically unfeasible for preservation. Our revised agreement, signed last month, clearly states our intent to proceed with a full redevelopment of the site. I believe your signature is on page 7, paragraph 4. He pointed a laser pointer at a magnified signature on the screen, leaving no room for doubt. Ilara felt the blood drain from her face. Her grandmother had fought for that clause, for any hope of saving the hall. Evelyn, even in her frail health, had believed in the power of their collective voice. But Thorne had outmaneuvered them all, twisting legalities into a weapon. "You misled us," Ilara accused, her voice rising, shaking with a fierce anger she hadn't known she possessed. "You promised to work with the community, to consider alternatives." Thorne merely shrugged, a gesture of ultimate power. "Business, Miss Hayes, is not about sentiment. It's about precision and profitability. Harmony Creek deserves a future, not a museum piece that drains its resources." He looked around at the defeated faces, a victor surveying his spoils. "I appreciate your musical interlude. But the fact remains, progress marches on, and Harmony Hall, I'm afraid, has reached the end of its song." His words hung heavy in the air, a chilling pronouncement of defeat. The murmurs of the crowd had died down, replaced by a despondent silence. The weight of Thorne's announcement pressed down on them all, crushing the nascent hope. 2 weeks. It felt impossible. What could one girl, one piano do against the might of a multi-million-dollar corporation and a signed contract? Ilara stared at Thorne, then at the piano, then at the faces of her neighbors, their eyes now reflecting the despair she felt threatening to consume her. She could practically hear Evelyn's voice, not just in her memory, but resonating from the very wood of the piano. "Never give up, Ilara. The greatest melodies are often born from the deepest silence." But what melody could possibly counter the harsh reality of a demolition permit? Just as Thorne was about to dismiss the meeting, a hand shot up in the back of the hall. It belonged to an old man, Silas Jenkins, a retired carpenter, whose eyes, usually twinkling, were now blazing with a quiet fury. "There's a clause," Silas declared, his voice raspy but firm. "A deed covenant from 1923. My grandfather helped draft it. It states that as long as the hall continues to serve as a center for community arts and cultural education, it cannot be razed. Not without the unanimous consent of the town's original founding families." Thorne paused, his eyebrows furrowing slightly. Preposterous, an archaic clause, utterly unenforceable. "Is it?" Silas challenged, rising slowly, his frame stooped, but his spirit unbowed. "It was renewed, Mr. Thorne. In 1978, and again, just 5 years ago. My family, the Jenkins, the Gables, the Thompsons, the Hayes, we are all founding families, and we do not consent." He pointed a gnarled finger at Ilara. "And as long as Miss Hayes here keeps the music alive, Harmony Hall is very much a center for community arts. Isn't that right, Ilara?" All eyes swung back to Ilara, who was grappling with this sudden, unexpected twist. A new hope, fragile but fierce, began to bloom within her. But Thorne's face, a moment ago slightly uncertain, contorted into a menacing glare. "If you think some dusty old parchment will stand in the way of progress," he snarled, "you underestimate me, Mr. Jenkins. I will have my lawyers scour every line, every word, and if it means uncovering any irregularities in your precious town's records, I assure you, we will find them. This hall will come down." His gaze flicked to Ilara, cold and full of warning. "And if you try to stop me, Miss Hayes, you'll find there are consequences far beyond a simple eviction notice." The implied threat hung in the air, a chilling promise that transcended legal battles and touched on something far more personal, far more dangerous. The chill of Randall Thorne's threat lingered in the air, a cold, predatory promise that seemed to seep into the very stones of Harmony Hall. Consequences far beyond a simple eviction notice. His words, sharp and venomous, echoed in Ilara's mind, a stark counterpoint to the vibrant hum of the Middle Sea she had just played. The town council members shifted uneasily, their faces a mixture of fear and growing indignation. Thorne, seeing the effect of his pronouncement, turned on his heel and strode out, his departure leaving a vacuum filled with stunned silence. Silas Jenkins, his hand still raised from his earlier declaration, sagged slightly, the fight draining from him for a moment. But then his gaze met Ilara's, and a flicker of stubborn resolve ignited in his eyes. He slowly made his way through the murmuring crowd to the stage, stopping beside her. "He's a viper, that one," Silas rasped, his voice rough but firm. "Never seen such gall. But he ain't won yet, Ilara, not by a long shot." He took her arm, a surprisingly strong grip for an old man, and led her to a quiet corner of the hall, near the dusty archives where her grandmother had spent so many hours. Mayor Thompson and Mrs. Gable followed, their faces etched with worry. "The deed covenant," Silas began, his voice lowered. "It's real. My grandfather, old Caleb, he was a stubborn man, knew the heart of this town better than anyone. He made sure that if Harmony Hall ever ceased to be a center for community arts and cultural education, then the land would revert back to the original families, preventing any single entity from just tearing it down. But the key, Ilara, is that phrase, Center for Community Arts and Cultural Education. As long as music plays, as long as people learn and create within these walls, that covenant holds true." "But how do we prove it?" Mrs. Gable wrung her hands. "We haven't had regular classes here in years, not since Evelyn got sick. The occasional concert, yes, but Thorne will argue that's not enough. He'll say it's not active." Mayor Thompson nodded grimly. "He's already started. A few hours after the meeting, my office received a call from a state inspector about unspecified code violations in the municipal building. And Mrs. Gable, your bakery just got a surprise visit from the health department this morning, claiming anonymous tips about unsanitary conditions. They found nothing, of course, but it's a clear message. Thorne is pushing back, hard." Ilara felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. Thorne wasn't just fighting the hall. He was targeting the people who dared to stand with it. This wasn't just a legal battle. It was a psychological war, designed to wear them down, to isolate them. But seeing the fear in her friend's eyes, something fierce ignited within her. Her grandmother's spirit, the one that had flowed through her fingers with that single note, surged. "Ha! Then we make it active," Ilara declared, her voice firm, drawing strength from the worried faces surrounding her. "We don't just say it's a center for arts. We make it one. Starting now, we'll organize classes, workshops, open mics, anything to fill these walls with music again, with learning. We'll call it the Harmony Revival Series." Mrs. Gable's eyes widened. "But Ilara, who would come? Who would teach? We don't have funding for this." "We do it ourselves," Ilara countered, looking from Silas to the mayor. "We volunteer. We ask everyone we know. We make it free or by donation. This isn't about profit. It's about purpose. It's about fighting for our home." She remembered her grandmother teaching her to read music using old hymn books, the patience in her voice, the joy in every discovered chord. Evelyn had always said, "Music is a gift to be shared, not hoarded." A glimmer of hope returned to the mayor's eyes. "It's audacious, Ilara. But it might just work. It shows due diligence, a clear intent to honor the covenant. Silas nodded, a slow, approving smile spreading across his weathered face. That's my girl. That's the spirit of this town. We start spreading the word tonight. We'll tell everyone. We'll show Thorn he can't buy our soul. The next few days were a whirlwind. Ilara felt a renewed sense of purpose, a fire in her belly. She worked tirelessly, scrubbing dust from the piano keys, polishing the stage floor and drafting flyers for the Harmony Revival series. Silas, despite his age, was a force of nature, spreading the news among the older residents, rallying support. Mrs. Gable, putting her bakery's health scare behind her, promised a steady supply of fresh bread and cookies for the events. Even Mayor Thompson, shedding his usual caution, used his office to discreetly send out announcements, careful not to directly antagonize Thorn. Ilara also found herself drawn back to her grandmother's small, tidy home, seeking comfort and inspiration. She sat at Evelyn's old writing desk, tracing the faded ink of her grandmother's musical notations, feeling Evelyn's presence in the quiet rooms. She found an old journal, its pages filled with Evelyn's elegant script. One entry, dated years ago, caught her eye. Harmony Hall is more than a stage. It is a sanctuary, a place where every soul, regardless of means, can find their voice. It belongs to the whispers of our past and the songs of our future. It solidified Ilara's conviction. The first Harmony Revival event was an open music lesson for children. Ilara, nervous but determined, stood on the stage, looking out at a surprisingly large group of eager young faces, some clutching battered violins, others just wide-eyed, ready to listen. The sight was a balm to her weary heart. As she taught them a simple melody, the sound of their small, hesitant voices blending together filled the hall, chasing away the shadows of Thorn's threats. For the first time in months, Harmony Hall truly felt alive again, but their newfound hope was immediately challenged. That evening, as Ilara walked home, exhausted but exhilarated, a sleek black car with tinted windows pulled up silently beside her. A window glided down, revealing a severe-looking woman with sharp, unblinking eyes. She held a pristine white envelope. "Miss Hayes." The woman's voice was devoid of emotion. "A message from Mr. Thorn, a friendly reminder of the terms of engagement." She handed Ilara the envelope. "He advises you to read it carefully. Your grandmother, Evelyn, would have understood its implications quite well, especially the parts concerning her own legacy." The car sped away, leaving Ilara standing under the flickering streetlights, her heart pounding. The envelope felt heavy in her hand, not just with paper, but with an unspoken threat. What could Thorn possibly know about her grandmother's legacy that would make him so confident? And what new weapon had he just aimed directly at her? Her fingers trembled as she tore open the seal, dread creeping in, certain that Thorn's friendly reminder was anything but. The crisp white envelope felt like a brick in Ilara's hand, heavy with Randall Thorn's chilling promise. Consequences far beyond a simple eviction notice, especially the parts concerning her own legacy. Standing beneath the flickering streetlights, the quiet hum of Harmony Creek's fading evening the only sound, Ilara tore open the seal, her fingers trembling. Inside wasn't a cease and desist order for the Harmony Revival series, nor a direct threat to her. Instead, it was a notice of default and foreclosure on her grandmother Evelyn's personal home, the very house Ilara now occupied. The details swam before her eyes, a substantial, long-standing mortgage, quietly held by a subsidiary of Thorn Developments, with a balance that felt insurmountable. Evelyn, fiercely independent and private, had clearly been struggling in silence, likely using her home as collateral to cover mounting medical expenses, or even the upkeep of Harmony Hall itself, refusing to burden anyone. The notice delivered the crushing blow, a deadline of 2 weeks. If the debt wasn't settled, the house would go to auction. This wasn't just about money. It was a ruthless, surgical strike against Ilara's emotional core, a direct assault on the memory and security of her grandmother. Thorne wasn't just trying to raise a building. He was trying to erase a life. Ilara's breath hitched in her throat. The cold, analytical cruelty of it was staggering. He wasn't just attacking the community. He was attacking her, personally, through her deepest vulnerability. Her grandmother's small, charming home, filled with the scent of old books and Evelyn's enduring spirit, was now on the chopping block, a pawn in Thorne's merciless game. The piano, the music, the covenant, all suddenly felt impossibly fragile against this financial tidal wave. She raced through the quiet streets to Silas Jenkins's modest bungalow, the foreclosure notice clutched tight in her hand. The old carpenter, startled by her urgent knocking, opened the door, his kind face creased with concern as he saw her distress. "Silas," Ilara choked out, thrusting the papers at him. "It's Evelyn's house. Thorne, he's going to take it." Silas adjusted his spectacles, his brow furrowing as he read the document. "A mortgage? I never knew Evelyn was in such dire straits. She was always so proud, so self-sufficient. She must have kept it quiet, not wanting to worry anyone." His voice softened with regret. "This is a low blow, Ilara. Thorne knows how much that house means to you, to her memory. He's trying to break you, to force your hand with the hall." Ilara sank onto Silas's worn couch, tears finally brimming. "How could she have kept it from me? And why this company? It's too convenient. He must have bought the debt, Silas. He bought it just to use against me." The injustice burned hot within her, overshadowing the initial despair. "Likely," Silas affirmed, his jaw tight. "He's a predator. He sees weakness and exploits it. But this also tells us something, Ilara. He's rattled. Your single note, the Harmony Revival series, the Covenant, it's working. You're a bigger threat than he anticipated, so he's escalating." He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We won't let him take it. We'll find a way." The weight of the deadline, 2 weeks, pressed down on Ilara like a physical burden. How could she fight for Harmony Hall, rallying a community, when her grandmother's sanctuary was under imminent threat? And yet, giving up the hall meant accepting Thorne's victory, admitting defeat. It meant Evelyn's legacy, both her home and the hall she cherished, would be lost. The next few days were a blur of frantic phone calls to banks, consultations with the few local lawyers willing to go up against Thorne. Most were intimidated, and a gnawing sense of helplessness. Each dead end, each polite refusal, felt like a fresh cut. Meanwhile, the Harmony Revival series gained surprising momentum. Children giggled during music lessons, local folk artists offered impromptu concerts, and a poetry workshop filled a small alcove with whispered verses. The hall, once echoing with silence, now resonated with life. Ilara found solace in the music, teaching, connecting, but the shadow of the foreclosure notice loomed large, a secret burden she carried alone, too proud and too afraid to confess the full extent of Thorne's machinations to the entire town. She couldn't let their nascent hope be extinguished by her personal battle. But Thorne's pressure continued. The state inspector, true to form, paid a second, more thorough visit to Harmony Hall itself. This time, he found significant and immediate structural concerns, conveniently discovered in areas that hadn't been an issue for a century. A temporary red tag was placed on a section of the hall, restricting public access. It was another clear message. Keep pushing, and he'd find more ways to make the hall uninhabitable, unsafe, and ultimately indefensible. One evening, exhausted after a full day of teaching and fruitless phone calls, Ilara returned to Evelyn's house. The air felt heavy, laden with memories and the threat of imminent loss. She sat at her grandmother's old writing desk, the same one where Evelyn had penned her heartfelt journal entries about the hall. Ilara ran her fingers over the smooth, worn wood, a silent plea to Evelyn for guidance. She found herself opening every drawer, sifting through old papers, hoping for a miracle, a forgotten will, a hidden stash of cash. There was nothing, just old bills, faded photographs, and sheet music. Then, her fingers brushed against a small, almost imperceptible groove along the underside of the desk's main surface. Pushing it gently, a tiny, concealed compartment clicked open. Inside, nestled on a bed of old velvet, was a single, ornately carved wooden box. It wasn't money. It wasn't a deed. It was a collection of letters, tied with a faded ribbon, addressed to Evelyn. And the handwriting, distinctive and elegant, wasn't her grandmother's. It was from a name Ilara had never heard before. Thomas Sterling. And tucked beneath the letters was a small, tarnished silver locket, the kind Evelyn always wore but had told Ilara held only old memories. As Ilara carefully untied the ribbon, a profound sense of unease settled over her. Her grandmother had been a private woman, but this felt different, a hidden world Ilara knew nothing about. The first letter, its paper brittle with age, began with words that stopped her heart cold. My dearest Evelyn, I regret the choices that have kept us apart, but my love for you and for our child has never wavered. Ilara gasped, the blood draining from her face. Our child? Evelyn had never spoken of another child. What secret had her grandmother been keeping all these years? And what connection did this Thomas Sterling, this hidden past, have to Evelyn's struggles, to Harmony Hall, and potentially to the future now hanging precariously in the balance? Surtout, my dearest Evelyn, I regret the choices that have kept us apart, but my love for you and for our child has never wavered. The words burned into Ilara's mind, searing away the exhaustion of the day, replacing it with a cold, hollow dread. Our child. It echoed in the silent room, a shocking, impossible revelation. Evelyn, her steadfast, unwavering grandmother, had kept such a profound secret. Ilara's own existence felt suddenly adrift, her understanding of the woman who raised her shattered. She reread the delicate script, her fingers tracing the words, searching for a nuance, a different interpretation. But there was none. And the locket, Evelyn's locket, which she'd always dismissed as a sentimental trinket, now felt heavy, burdened with untold stories. The thought of Thorne's menacing words, her own legacy, sent a fresh wave of panic through her. Did he know about this? Was this the hidden vulnerability he intended to exploit? Her heart pounded, a frantic drum against her ribs. She felt a profound sense of betrayal, not just for herself, but for Evelyn, who had clearly lived with this unspoken sorrow for decades. She knew there was only one person who might have answers, a confidant from her grandmother's generation. Clutching the letters and the locket, Ilara found herself once again at Silas Jenkins's door, her face pale, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. Silas, seeing the raw pain in her eyes, knew instantly this was something beyond the hall. He led her to his kitchen, brewing a calming cup of chamomile tea as Ilara, in a rush of words, explained the discovery. She spread the letters on his table, the faded ink a testament to a lifetime of hidden love and loss. Silas picked up one of the letters, his gaze softening as he read the familiar handwriting. Thomas Sterling, he murmured, a name Ilara had never heard. So Evelyn finally let you in on her secret. Or rather, he did. He looked at Ilara, a profound sadness in his eyes. This is a long story, Ilara, a painful one. He began, his voice low, weaving a narrative from a bygone era of Harmony Creek. Thomas Sterling wasn't from around here, not originally. He came here in the late 1940s, a gifted architect, hired to consult on the original repairs of Harmony Hall after that big flood. He and Evelyn, well, they fell in love. A whirlwind romance. She was a fiery spirit, even then, a talented musician, and he was captivated. But Thomas, he came from a powerful family, a wealthy, influential family up north. They had grand plans for him, plans that didn't include a small-town musician from Harmony Creek. Ilara listened, mesmerized and heartbroken, as Silas painted a picture of a love born under the grand arches of Harmony Hall, a love tragically cut short by the rigid expectations of society. His family intervened, Ilara. They threatened to disinherit him, to ruin his career. They pulled him away, promised Evelyn they'd return, but they never did. He sent letters, always, through a trusted friend, for years, but they were never enough to bridge the chasm his family created. And the child? Ilara whispered, the question heavy with its own unspoken grief. Silas sighed, his gaze distant. It was a boy. Evelyn gave him up, Ilara, to Thomas's family. It was the only way they would allow Thomas to even consider coming back to her, or so they claimed. A terrible, impossible choice. Evelyn was young, alone, and without means. She loved that boy, and Thomas more than anything. She believed she was giving him a better life, a life she couldn't provide. She truly believed Thomas would find a way back, that they would be a family. But he never did. Or rather, his family never allowed him to. A cold dread seeped into Ilara. Evelyn, who had given so much to Harmony Creek, had suffered such a profound, silent loss. The weight of her grandmother's sacrifice, the unbearable choice of giving up a child, settled deep in Ilara's soul. This explained so much of Evelyn's quiet strength, her fierce devotion to the hall, her unwavering belief in the power of music to heal. It was her sanctuary, her solace, the place where her heart had first known love and then known its deepest pain. But what does this have to do with Thorn? Ilara asked, her voice tight with suspicion. And the house? Why would his company hold the mortgage? Silas's eyes narrowed. Thomas Sterling's family, Ilara, was the Sterling Group, one of the oldest, most powerful development companies in the country. And Randall Thorn, he's a distant relative, Thomas's grandnephew, I believe. He took over the Sterling Group a few years back, after Thomas passed away. Ilara gasped, the pieces clicking into place with a sickening finality. Thorn wasn't just a ruthless developer. He was connected to Evelyn's deepest wound. He was the legacy of the very family that had broken her heart, that had stolen her child. This wasn't just business. It was personal. He was dismantling her grandmother's entire world, brick by emotional brick. So Thorn bought the mortgage, Ilara concluded, her voice laced with a bitter understanding. He knows about all of it. He's using it against me, to erase Evelyn entirely. Just then, Silas's landline rang, jarring them both. he answered, his brow furrowing deeper as he listened. He hung up, his face grim. That was Mayor Thompson. Thorne's lawyers just filed a motion with the county. They're claiming the Harmony Revival series is operating without proper permits, in violation of the red tag order, and is thus endangering the public. They're seeking an immediate injunction to shut down all activities at Harmony Hall, permanently. The news landed like another punch. Thorne was escalating, relentlessly. He wasn't just playing hardball, he was playing dirty. He was twisting legalities and exploiting personal history with chilling precision. The Harmony Revival series, their fragile beacon of hope, was under direct attack. Ilara's despair began to twist into a fierce, cold resolve. She looked at the letters, then at the locket in her hand, feeling the weight of Evelyn's silent suffering, the echo of a love lost. She looked at Silas, whose own eyes held a reflection of a painful past. This wasn't just about Harmony Hall anymore, or even her grandmother's house. This was about justice. For Evelyn, for Thomas, for the child they never knew, for a love that had been stolen. "He won't win," Ilara declared, her voice low and steady, a new strength hardening her features. "He won't erase Evelyn, and he won't tear down Harmony Hall. We fight back, Silas. We don't just defend, we expose him. We tell Harmony Creek the real story of Randall Thorne and the Sterling Group, the whole truth." She picked up the locket, opening it. Inside were two faded photographs, one of a young, radiant Evelyn, and the other, surprisingly, of a baby, tiny and swaddled. Evelyn's lost son. Thomas Sterling's lost son. Ilara's heart ached, but a terrifying thought suddenly sparked in her mind. What if that lost son wasn't so lost after all? What if he was closer than anyone could imagine? The implications sent a shiver down her spine, a mix of fear and a strange, desperate hope. The locket clutched in Ilara's hand, the faded photographs of a young Evelyn and a swaddled infant staring up at her, felt like a burning coal. Our child. A Sterling. And Randall Thorne was a Sterling, a grandnephew of Thomas. A terrifying, exhilarating thought sparked in Ilara's mind. What if Evelyn's lost son wasn't lost at all, but a pivotal part of the very family trying to destroy her legacy? What if he was closer, more entwined with Thorne's ruthlessness than she could possibly imagine? Leaving Silas to grapple with Mayor Thompson over Thorne's injunction against the Harmony Revival series, Ilara raced back to her grandmother's house, her mind reeling. The foreclosure notice, the red tag on Harmony Hall, all of it faded into the background, eclipsed by this monumental, agonizing secret. She needed answers, and she needed them now. She plunged into Evelyn's old study, switching on the desk lamp, its beam cutting through the gloom. With frantic fingers, Ilara pulled out Evelyn's old desktop computer, a relic from a simpler time, but still functional. She navigated to the internet, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She typed Sterling Group into the search bar, then Sterling Family Tree, Thomas Sterling History. Corporate profiles, news articles, historical archives, they all began to paint a sprawling, intricate picture. The Sterling Group was an old money dynasty, built on industry and real estate, notorious for its aggressive expansion. Thomas Sterling, the architect, was indeed a member, albeit a less prominent one, his artistic leanings seemingly at odds with his family's corporate ambitions. The records indicated he had passed away years ago, a quiet mention, perhaps a reflection of his less conventional life. But then, Ilara found a genealogical record, painstakingly pieced together by a historical society. Thomas Sterling had an older brother, Arthur Sterling, who had indeed been the ruthless, ambitious patriarch of the family. He'd wielded immense power, orchestrating much of the Sterling Group's growth, and Arthur had a son named Randall. A cold dread seeped into Ilara's bones. Randall Thorne's full name was Randall Arthur Sterling Thorne. His mother had kept the Thorne as a surname, but the Sterling was there undeniably. Randall Thorne was Arthur Sterling's son, which meant he was Thomas Sterling's grandnephew, just as Silas had said. But the plot thickened. The genealogical records also mentioned that Arthur Sterling had adopted a young boy, a cousin's son, born around the same time Evelyn's child would have been. This boy, named simply Michael Sterling, grew up within the Sterling Empire, eventually rising through its ranks. He was the current, highly influential chairman of the Sterling Group. Michael Sterling. Michael. Ilara's breath caught in her throat. Michael Sterling, Evelyn's lost son. The child she had given up. He wasn't Thorne's father, he was Thorne's uncle. The man who held the purse strings, who could ultimately dictate the fate of the Sterling Group, and by extension Harmony Hall, was Evelyn's flesh and blood. And he was Evelyn's first son, given up, raised by the very family that had separated his parents. The irony was a cruel twist of fate. She searched for images of Michael Sterling. A stern, impeccably dressed man in his early 70s stared back at her from a corporate profile. His eyes, though hard, held a faint echo of the same depth she'd seen in Evelyn's old photographs. And the shape of his jaw. There was a resemblance she couldn't deny. It was him, Evelyn's son. A powerful, formidable man who, unknowingly, was allowing his nephew, Randall, to demolish his own mother's cherished legacy. The revelation hit Ilara like a physical blow. Her grandmother's unspeakable sorrow, the reason for her quiet strength, now had a face and a name. And that name was tied directly to the very forces destroying Harmony Creek. The injustice of it all, the sheer tragedy of Evelyn's life and her lost love, ignited a new, scorching fire within Ilara. This wasn't just about property anymore. It was about rectifying a historical wrong, about bringing a lost son back into the light of his true heritage. Just as this profound truth settled in, Ilara's phone buzzed with an urgent text from Silas. The injunction. Thorne got it. Judge granted a temporary restraining order. No more events at the hall. Effective immediately. The news was devastating, but Ilara's resolve remained unbroken. The legal battle for Harmony Hall was now inextricably linked to the emotional battle for Evelyn's forgotten son. She had found a powerful truth, a deeply personal weapon against Thorne's corporate might. But how could she approach Michael Sterling, this formidable CEO, with such an unbelievable story? How could she convince him of his true parentage without being dismissed as a desperate charlatan trying to save a building? She decided she couldn't face this alone. She needed Silas, she needed Mayor Thompson, and she needed to tell them everything. But first, she needed proof that Michael Sterling was indeed Evelyn's son. Beyond the familial resemblance, she needed something undeniable. She remembered Evelyn's journal, the small, hidden compartment. Was there anything else? She returned to the desk, her fingers brushing against the velvet-lined space where the letters had been. Her eyes scanned the inside of the secret drawer. And then she saw it. Tucked deep into a corner, a tiny rolled-up piece of parchment, tied with a faded ribbon. It was a birth certificate. As she unrolled it, her hands trembling, she saw the name, Michael Hayes. Born in Harmony Creek. Mother, Evelyn Hayes. Father, unspecified. But then, beneath it, a separate, handwritten notation, almost illegible, in Evelyn's own elegant script, given to Arthur Sterling, September 1948, renamed Michael Sterling. The world tilted. The undeniable legal proof. Michael Sterling, the chairman of the Sterling Group, was Evelyn's son, and Randall Thorne was his nephew. The man trying to demolish Harmony Hall was trying to erase his own grandmother's legacy. Armed with this explosive truth, Ilara knew her next move had to be swift, calculated, and public. She couldn't allow Thorne to continue his quiet campaign of destruction and personal attacks. She had to expose him, expose the truth of his family's past, and expose the identity of Michael Sterling to the world. It was a dangerous game, one that could backfire spectacularly, but she felt Evelyn's spirit, strong and defiant, guiding her. Just as Ilara was gathering the documents, ready to rush out and confront Silas and the mayor with her discoveries, her phone rang. It was an unknown number, displaying only private caller. Hesitantly, she answered, her heart thumping. A deep, authoritative voice, older but clear, spoke on the other end. "Is this Ilara Hayes?" the voice asked, with a gravitas that instantly commanded attention. "My name is Michael Sterling. I believe you've been doing some rather thorough research into my family history, and my mother's." Ilara froze, the phone almost slipping from her grasp. He knew. How? And what did he want? Her mind raced, 1,000 questions and fears swirling. The ultimate confrontation, with the lost son himself, had just landed in her lap. "Is this Ilara Hayes?" The voice, deep and resonant, felt like a physical presence in the room, cutting through the tense silence of Evelyn's study. "My name is Michael Sterling. I believe you've been doing some rather thorough research into my family history, and my mother's." Ilara froze, the breath catching in her throat. The birth certificate and letters clutched so tightly in her hand that the paper crinkled. He knew. How? Had Thorne already moved against her, anticipating her next step? Or had Michael Sterling been watching her quietly from the shadows? The implications were staggering, dangerous. "Mr. Sterling," Ilara managed, her voice barely a whisper, a strange mix of fear and exhilaration surging through her. How did you know to call me?" There was a brief pause on the line, a calculated silence. "Let's just say I have various sources, including certain internal reports regarding your rather spirited defense of Harmony Hall, and a few discreet inquiries into the local gossip. Your name has become rather prominent, Miss Hayes, as has your connection to Evelyn, and as you've discovered, her connection to my family." His tone was devoid of emotion, a cool corporate efficiency that belied the deeply personal nature of their conversation. I just learned about my grandmother's past," Ilara confessed, her voice shaking slightly, but she quickly steadied it. This was her moment. She couldn't crumble now. "About you, about Thomas, and what your family did." "A painful history, I'm told," Michael Sterling said, his voice still flat. "One my adoptive father, Arthur, ensured was kept under wraps. But history, like music, always finds a way to echo. Tell me, Miss Hayes, what do you intend to do with this discovery?" The question hung in the air, a thinly veiled warning, or perhaps an invitation. Ilara took a deep breath. She had to be honest, unwavering. "I intend to save Harmony Hall, Mr. Sterling, and my grandmother's home. Your nephew, Randall, is trying to destroy them both, using legal loopholes and personal attacks. He's tearing down the very legacy of the woman who gave you life." Her voice gained strength, fueled by indignation and a burgeoning sense of purpose. And I intend to expose him, to expose the truth about your family's past, about what they did to Evelyn and Thomas, to you. Another silence, longer this time. Ilara imagined him, a powerful man in a towering office, weighing her words, assessing her threat. She could almost feel the weight of his scrutiny across the miles. "Bold, Miss Hayes," Michael Sterling finally said, a hint of something unreadable in his tone. "And perhaps foolish. You are up against forces far more powerful than you can imagine. Randall has ambitions and a ruthless streak that runs deep." There was a pause. "However, I confess your revelations about my adoptive father's past and my own obscured origins are something I've long suspected but never confirmed. Evelyn Hayes was a name I heard whispered, a shadow in my childhood. Randall's recent aggressive tactics in Harmony Creek and his dismissive attitude towards its history have only fueled my own unease." Ilara's heart pounded. He wasn't dismissing her. He was listening. "I'm flying to Harmony Creek tonight," Michael Sterling stated, the suddenness of it startling her. "I want to see this hall. I want to meet the people you're fighting for, and I want to understand what it is that drives you so fiercely. Do not speak of this call to anyone. Not yet. I will arrive unannounced. Meet me at Harmony Hall tomorrow morning, precisely at 9 o'clock, and bring those documents, every single one." The line clicked, and he was gone. Ilara stared at her phone, her hand still tingling. Michael Sterling, her grandmother's lost son, the chairman of the Sterling Group, was coming to Harmony Creek. And he wanted to meet her. This was it. The ultimate gamble, the highest stakes. The following morning dawned crisp and clear, but the air in Harmony Creek was thick with tension. The temporary restraining order meant Harmony Hall was silent, its doors locked, its windows reflecting the worried faces of townspeople passing by. The red tag on the side of the building seemed to mock their efforts. Ilara arrived at the hall well before 9, the hidden compartment of her bag containing the letters, the locket, and the precious birth certificate. Silas and Mayor Thompson met her, their faces etched with concern over the latest legal blow. "The injunction means we can't hold any more classes, Ilara," Mayor Thompson lamented, running a hand through his thinning hair. "We can't prove active use of the hall if we're not allowed inside. Thorne is effectively shutting us down, legally," Silas added, his gaze troubled. "He's buying himself time to dismantle the deed covenant. He's going to claim the hall is no longer a community arts center." Ilara, however, held a secret hope, a knowledge that made her stand a little taller. "Just wait," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the empty street. "Things are about to change." She couldn't tell them about Michael Sterling yet, not until she saw him with her own eyes. Exactly at 9 o'clock, a sleek black limousine, far too luxurious for Harmony Creek, pulled up to the curb. Randall Thorne himself emerged from the back seat, followed by 2 stern-faced lawyers and the same unblinking woman who had delivered the foreclosure notice. But then, to Ilara's shock, a second figure emerged from the limo's passenger side. Michael Sterling. He was exactly as in the corporate photos, impeccably dressed, an aura of quiet authority radiating from him. His eyes, though, held a depth she hadn't seen in the 2-dimensional image, a hint of something guarded, weary. Randall Thorne immediately noticed his uncle. His face, usually a mask of smug confidence, contorted into an expression of profound shock and barely concealed fury. "Uncle Michael, what are you doing here?" he stammered, clearly taken aback. "I wasn't aware you were in town," This is a local matter, perfectly handled by my team. Michael Sterling's gaze was cold as it settled on his nephew. Apparently not, Randall. It seems your local matter has escalated rather significantly. And he turned his gaze to the locked doors of Harmony Hall, then to Alara, who stood rigid, clutching her bag. It concerns a legacy that is far more personal than you understand. He began to walk towards Alara, his eyes fixed on her, acknowledging her presence in a way that left no doubt about his intentions. Randall Thorne, however, was not one to be easily circumvented. As Michael Sterling took another step towards Alara, Thorne's lead lawyer, a sharp-featured woman with a severe bun, stepped forward, blocking his path. "Mr. Sterling," she interjected smoothly, "we have an active court order. No public access to the hall. This young woman and her associates are currently in violation simply by gathering here." Her eyes flicked to Alara, a warning in their depths. Michael Sterling paused, his gaze slowly shifting to his nephew's lawyer, then to Randall, his expression unreadable. The air crackled with unspoken tension. The confrontation Alara had anticipated was now unfolding before her, but in a way far more public, far more dangerous than she could have imagined. Her heart hammered against her ribs. What would Michael do? And how would Randall react to his uncle's direct interference? The future of Harmony Hall, of Evelyn's legacy, and of a lifetime of secrets, was about to be laid bare on these quiet streets. The air crackled with unspoken tension as Randall Thorne's lead lawyer, a woman named Ms. Albright, stepped forward, her severe bun and sharper demeanor attempting to halt Michael Sterling's approach. "Mr. Sterling," she interjected, her voice laced with a thinly veiled warning. "We have an active court order. No public access to the hall. This young woman and her associates are currently in violation simply by gathering here." Her eyes, cold and calculating, flicked to Alara, a clear threat. Michael Sterling paused, his gaze slowly shifting from Ms. Albright to Randall, his expression unreadable. For a fleeting second, Alara feared he might side with his nephew, might dismiss her and the truth she held. But then, his eyes returned to Miss Albright, and a subtle shift occurred. "Ms. Albright," he said, his voice quiet but carrying an immense authority that silenced every other sound. "I am the chairman of the Sterling Group. I believe that grants me certain privileges, even in local matters." He then addressed Randall, his tone hardening. "And you, Randall, seem to have neglected to inform me of the full scope of your activities here, and the true nature of the Sterling Group's involvement in Harmony Creek." He took another deliberate step, forcing Ms. Albright to retreat, creating a path directly to Alara. Alara met his gaze, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. She watched his eyes, searching for any flicker of recognition, any hint that he might already suspect. As he reached her, the proximity was dizzying, the weight of generations of secrets between them almost palpable. "You said to bring the documents," Alara stated, her voice steady, despite the tremor in her hands. She opened her bag and, with a swift motion, presented the bundle of Evelyn's letters, the tarnished silver locket, and finally, the precious, yellowed birth certificate. "This is Evelyn's story, Mr. Sterling. And yours." Michael Sterling took the documents, his movements precise, almost detached. He read the first letter, then the next, his eyes scanning the elegant script of Thomas Sterling. He opened the locket, gazing at the faded images of a young Evelyn and the swaddled baby. Finally, his eyes fell upon the birth certificate. Michael Hayes. Mother, Evelyn Hayes. Father, unspecified. And then, the handwritten annotation in Evelyn's script. Given to Arthur Sterling, September 1948. Renamed Michael Sterling. The corporate mask that usually shielded Michael Sterling's face crumbled, revealing a raw, profound shock. His jaw clenched, a muscle working furiously. His eyes, fixed on the birth certificate, blurred slightly. The revelation hit him not as a business deal, but as a deeply personal, seismic event, shattering the very foundation of his identity. A lifetime of unspoken questions, of a vague sense of displacement, suddenly found their agonizing answer. He was not just a Sterling by adoption. He was Evelyn's son, torn from her by the very family he had dedicated his life to. Randall Thorne, meanwhile, stood rigid, his face a mixture of disbelief and escalating fury. He rushed forward. "Uncle Michael, this is preposterous! A desperate fabrication! This woman is trying to manipulate you, to save this derelict hall. These are clearly forgeries, a cheap trick to invalidate our contract." He made a move to snatch the papers, but Michael Sterling's hand shot out, a surprising strength in his grip, warding him off. "Silence, Randall," Michael commanded, his voice low, gravelly, imbued with an authority that left no room for defiance. He looked up, his eyes, still clouded with emotion, settling on Ilara. "So Evelyn kept them, all these years?" It wasn't a question, but a statement laden with a lifetime of regret and unanswered prayers. "She kept everything," Ilara confirmed, her voice catching. "She never forgot you, never stopped loving Thomas." Harmony Hall. It was her sanctuary, the last place she truly felt connected to her past, to her family. She pointed to the faded exterior. "You were born here, Mr. Sterling. This is your mother's legacy, your true inheritance. Randall is trying to demolish it, along with her house, because he thinks he can erase history." Michael Sterling's gaze moved from the documents to the hall, then to the faces of Silas Jenkins and Mayor Thompson, whose expressions ranged from stunned awe to dawning understanding. He saw the desperate hope in their eyes, the quiet strength that had sustained Harmony Creek through generations. He then turned his full, searing attention back to Randall. "You acquired the mortgage on Evelyn Hayes's home, and you pushed for this injunction, knowing it would cripple the community's efforts to save this place." Randall, for once, seemed to lose his composure. He stammered, "It was a business decision, Uncle Michael. She was interfering with the development. The hall is unsound. It's a liability, a historical footnote that's costing the company millions in potential revenue." "A historical footnote?" Michael repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. He folded the birth certificate with meticulous care, tucking it into his inner jacket pocket, as if protecting a sacred relic. "This historical footnote, Randall, is my mother. And this hall, it seems, is a testament to her life, her love, and her heartbreaking sacrifice." He paused, his eyes now filled with a simmering rage, fixed on his nephew. "As of this moment, Randall, all demolition plans for Harmony Hall are suspended, indefinitely, and the foreclosure proceedings on Evelyn Hayes's home are terminated, effective immediately. Ms. Albright, if you could inform your team." The words hung in the air, a thunderclap in the quiet morning. Randall Thorne's face went white, his jaw dropping in disbelief. Albright looked utterly bewildered, her eyes darting between Michael and Randall. Silas Jenkins let out a ragged breath, a silent cheer forming on his lips. Mayor Thompson looked as if he might faint from relief. "But Uncle Michael, you can't!" Randall finally choked out, his voice hoarse with fury. "This is sabotage. Our contracts, Randall," Michael interrupted, his voice steel, "are subject to the chairman's review." And my review, as of this moment, indicates a gross misrepresentation of facts, a profound lack of respect for community, and a personal vendetta masked as progress. You will return to the city. Your direct involvement in this project is concluded. His gaze swept over the small group of townsfolk, then back to Alara. We will be reviewing the entire Harmony Creek project, including your future within the Sterling Group, Randall. Do not attempt to interfere further. With that, Michael Sterling turned his back on his stunned nephew, leaving him sputtering with impotent rage. He then faced Alara, his expression softening, a flicker of something profoundly human in his eyes. "Miss Hayes," he said, extending a hand to her, a gesture of respect, of newfound kinship. "Thank you for having the courage to uncover this truth. It seems I owe Harmony Creek and Evelyn's legacy a great deal more than I ever realized." He looked back at the hall, at the silent locked doors. "I believe it's time to reopen Harmony Hall, and for its music to play louder than ever." But even as a wave of relief washed over Alara, and a quiet cheer rose from the small group of townsfolk, she saw Randall Thorne, his face contorted in a mask of vengeful hatred, pull out his phone. His thumb moved quickly across the screen, his eyes still fixed on Alara with a chilling promise. The immediate battle for Harmony Hall was won, but the war, Alara knew, was far from over, and Randall Thorne, cornered and humiliated, was a dangerous enemy indeed. His silent fury was a silent declaration of a new, perhaps more insidious threat. Randall Thorne, his face a mask of vengeful hatred, pulled out his phone, his thumb flying across the screen. The quiet hum of the luxury sedan that had carried him here now purred to life, a stark contrast to the boiling fury in his eyes as he cast one last chilling glance at Alara. The immediate battle for Harmony Hall might have been won, but Alara knew with a cold certainty that the war was far from over. Humiliated, Randall Thorne was a dangerous enemy indeed, his silent fury a declaration of a new, perhaps more insidious threat. Michael Sterling, however, seemed oblivious to his nephew's simmering rage. He stood before Alara, a man profoundly shaken, yet remarkably composed. The transformation was subtle, yet undeniable. The stern corporate mask had fallen away, revealing a vulnerability Alara hadn't expected. He looked at her, then at the now unlocked doors of Harmony Hall, a deep sigh escaping his lips. "Evelyn," he murmured, a name whispered with a weight of 60 years of loss. "Mr. Sterling," Alara began, but he gently raised a hand. "Michael," he corrected, his voice softer now. "Please and thank you, Alara, truly. You have given me back a part of myself I never knew was missing." His eyes, usually sharp and analytical, were now tinged with a raw, nascent grief, the kind that comes from belated understanding. "I need to understand all of it. Every letter, every memory. But first, we must secure this place." Within hours, Michael Sterling moved with a decisive speed that Randall Thorne could only dream of. His legal team, dispatched from the city, arrived in Harmony Creek, swiftly overturning the injunction against Harmony Hall and rescinding the foreclosure notice on Evelyn's house. The red tag on the building was gone, replaced by a promise of a full structural assessment and necessary repairs, all funded by the Sterling Group. The Harmony Revival series was not only reinstated, but now had the full, quiet backing of a corporate giant dedicated to rectifying past wrongs. The news spread like wildfire through Harmony Creek. Relief washed over the town, palpable and overwhelming. Mrs. Gable cried openly, embracing Alara. Silas Jenkins, his eyes moist, clapped Michael Sterling on the back, a gesture of profound gratitude. "Welcome home, son," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Michael merely nodded, a complex mix of emotions playing across his face. For the rest of the day, Michael and Alara sat in Evelyn's study, the letters and birth certificate spread between them. He read each word, absorbing the decades of Evelyn's quiet heartbreak, the depth of Thomas Sterling's enduring love. He learned about Evelyn's fight to keep Harmony Hall alive, how it was her solace after losing him. Alara spoke of Evelyn's resilience, her unwavering belief in the power of music and community. Michael listened, his face a study in revelation and regret, tears eventually tracking paths down his weathered cheeks. He learned about the man his father truly was, not just the architect, but the heartbroken lover who never gave up hope. "My adoptive father, Arthur," Michael finally said, his voice raw. He made sure all of Thomas's letters to Evelyn were intercepted after he was forced to leave Harmony Creek. He told me Evelyn had moved on, found another life. He twisted the truth, painting her as a flighty, selfish woman who couldn't provide for a child. He even told Thomas that Evelyn had remarried and wanted nothing to do with him or their son. He built a wall between them, a wall of lies and manipulation, to ensure I was raised a Sterling, molded into his image. The betrayal from his adoptive father cut deeper than he'd imagined, a truth more painful than a simple lack of love. Alara's heart ached for him, for the lost years, the stolen love. "Your mother never stopped loving you, Michael, or Thomas. She fought for this hall, for this town, because it was all she had left of that love." Michael looked at her, his eyes shining with newfound purpose. "Then we will honor her, Alara. We will not just save Harmony Hall, we will make it thrive. A living testament to Evelyn's spirit and to the truth that was silenced for too long." He shared his vision, a fully revitalized Harmony Hall, a world-class arts and education center dedicated to Evelyn Hayes, providing free music and arts education to the community. It was a dream Alara hadn't dared to voice, now spoken by the man who had the power to make it real. But even as they planned, the shadow of Randall Thorne still loomed. The next morning, the local news channel, usually a benign source of community events, broke with a scathing report. The headline flashed across the screen: "Sterling Group Chairman's Sentimental Land Grab Halts Crucial Harmony Creek Development. Accusations of nepotism and financial mismanagement surface." The story, clearly planted by Randall, painted Michael Sterling as an irrational, emotionally compromised leader, using corporate funds to indulge a personal vendetta against his nephew and an old flame. It even subtly hinted at a scandalous past with a mystery woman that explained his sudden, erratic behavior. The article attacked Alara too, portraying her as a cunning manipulator, exploiting a vulnerable elderly man for personal gain and attempting to extort the Sterling Group. It mentioned the mortgage on Evelyn's house, twisting it to suggest Alara was trying to use the hall to pay off personal debts. The phones at Mayor Thompson's office began to ring off the hook. Doubts, carefully sown by Randall, began to fester among some of the townspeople, especially those who had initially supported Thorne's promises of economic revitalization. The media firestorm threatened to undo everything they had achieved. "He's trying to discredit us," Alara said, showing Michael the article, her voice tight with anger. "He's trying to make your decision look like a personal bias, not a just act. And he's attacking Evelyn's memory." Michael's face was grim. "He's playing dirty, trying to force a boardroom challenge, to make me look unfit to lead. He'll argue I'm acting on emotion, not sound business judgment." This is a direct assault on my leadership, and it could destabilize the entire Sterling group. He looked at Alara, his gaze resolute. We have to fight back, Alara, and we have to do it publicly. We have to tell the whole truth, everything, to everyone. But the platform, it has to be perfect, and it has to be here. He gestured towards Harmony Hall. We'll use the grand reopening. And you, Alara, you will be the voice that tells the story, the voice that truly brings harmony back to this creek. Alara's heart pounded. A grand reopening, a public declaration. It was terrifying, exhilarating. But Michael's words carried a deeper meaning. The voice, he said. He wasn't just talking about her ability to speak, but her ability to play. To weave Evelyn's story, his story, the town's story, into a melody that would silence all doubt. The stakes were impossibly high. If they failed, Thorne would not only tear down Harmony Hall, but destroy both Michael Sterling's career and Alara's reputation, leaving Harmony Creek shattered and defeated. And Alara knew, with a sudden, chilling certainty, that Randall Thorne had one more, far more devastating card left to play. Something he'd kept hidden, something personal that could break them all. Randall Thorne's chilling promise, a silent declaration of a new, insidious threat, echoed in Alara's mind as preparations for the grand reopening of Harmony Hall moved into high gear. She knew he wouldn't go down without a final, desperate strike. And he did. Just hours before the event, a local gossip blog, suddenly flush with anonymous tips, published a scandalous exposé. It claimed to have unearthed irrefutable proof that Evelyn Hayes was not the saintly figure Alara and Michael painted, but a manipulative woman who had willingly abandoned her child to pursue a fleeting musical career, only to resurface years later demanding money from the wealthy Sterling family. It featured fabricated excerpts from letters, twisted out of context, suggesting Evelyn had actively renounced her son, deeming him a burden in exchange for a mysterious sum from Arthur Sterling. It was a vicious, calculated attack, designed to shatter Evelyn's reputation, discredit Michael's motives, and poison the well of public sentiment against Alara. Alara's phone immediately began to ring, calls from concerned townspeople, from Mayor Thompson, from a furious Silas Jenkins. The whispers of doubt, carefully sown by Randall, were now screaming. How could Michael defend his decision? How could Alara stand tall when Evelyn herself was being dragged through the mud? Michael Sterling, grim-faced, held the printout of the article. He's trying to make Evelyn look like a gold digger, a liar, he said, his voice tight with controlled fury. He's trying to justify his grandfather's actions by assassinating her character. This is his final, most despicable move. It's a lie, Alara declared, her voice trembling with indignation, but her eyes burning with a fierce resolve. She loved you, Michael. She loved Thomas. She sacrificed everything. We have to tell the truth. All of it. The atmosphere inside Harmony Hall, usually buzzing with excitement before a grand event, was now heavy with apprehension. A large crowd had gathered, a mix of curious onlookers, loyal townspeople, and stern-faced reporters. Michael's security team was discreetly positioned, aware of the high stakes. Michael stood beside Alara on the stage, the newly polished Mason and Hamlin grand piano gleaming under the spotlights. Just as Michael was about to begin his opening remarks, the double doors at the back of the hall burst open. Randall Thorne strode in, flanked by Ms. Albright and a phalanx of flashbulb-wielding paparazzi. His face was triumphant, a predator savoring its prey. He held a thick stack of papers aloft, clearly intending to interrupt, to deliver his final, crushing blow. "Ladies and gentlemen," Randall's voice boomed, cutting through the hushed anticipation. "Before you listen to a sentimental fairy tale spun by a disgruntled relative and a clever opportunist, allow me to present the real truth about Evelyn Hayes. Documents that prove her true, selfish nature." He began to push his way through the crowd, heading straight for the stage, ready to grandstand. Michael Sterling, however, anticipated him. He raised a hand, silencing the murmurs. "Randall," he said, his voice resonating with a quiet power that drew all attention to him. "You are too late. The truth has already begun to echo, and it does not need your fabricated lies." He turned to Ilara, a profound trust in his eyes. "Ilara, please, tell them our story. Tell them Evelyn's story, in the only way that truly captures its heart." Ilara took a deep breath, her heart pounding. This was it. Not just for Harmony Hall, not just for Evelyn, but for Michael, for the integrity of truth against deceit. She walked to the piano, her fingers hovering over the keys. The grand reopening of Harmony Hall, the redemption of a family's buried past, rested on her. She looked at Randall, still trying to force his way forward, his face red with frustration. Then, her gaze swept over the crowd, finally landing on Michael, who nodded, a silent command for courage. She began to play. It wasn't a showy, complex piece. It was the simple melody her grandmother had taught her, the one that had first opened her heart to music. But Ilara wove into it a profound sorrow, a yearning, a fierce resilience. Each note resonated with the quiet strength of Evelyn's life, the pain of Thomas's loss, the yearning of a son unknowingly separated from his mother. It swelled and softened, gaining depth and emotion, until it was a living, breathing narrative, filling the hall with a poignant, undeniable truth. As she played, Ilara's voice, clear and unwavering, began to speak, weaving her grandmother's journey with the music. Evelyn Hayes loved this hall, loved this town, loved a man named Thomas Sterling, and she bore his son. A son she believed she was giving a better life, a son she never stopped loving, a son she secretly hoped would one day return to Harmony Creek. As she spoke, Michael Sterling, his eyes fixed on Ilara, nodded, then stepped forward, addressing the crowd. "That son," Michael's voice was now full and clear, filled with an emotion that captivated every person, "is me, Michael Sterling. My adoptive father, Arthur Sterling, orchestrated a lie that kept my mother, Evelyn Hayes, and my true father, Thomas Sterling, apart for decades. He convinced them both that the other had moved on, that I was better off without them. He hid the truth, hoping to erase a past he deemed inconvenient. But he could not erase a mother's love, a father's devotion, or the soul of this community." He then held up Evelyn's letters, the locket, and a magnified image of the birth certificate projected onto the screen above the stage. "These are the true documents. They are the proof of a love that defied separation, and a sacrifice that honored a child's future. Evelyn Hayes was a woman of unwavering integrity, a pillar of this community. And her legacy, this hall, my home, will stand as a testament to that truth." He looked pointedly at Randall. "My nephew's actions were driven by greed and a desire to obscure a family history he found inconvenient. He attempted to use Evelyn's personal struggles and my own obscured parentage to profit and to gain control of the Sterling Group. But the truth, like music, cannot be silenced forever." Ilara's melody reached its crescendo, a powerful, soaring anthem that filled every corner of Harmony Hall. It was a song of redemption, of love found, of justice reclaimed. The audience, swept up in the raw emotion of the moment, rose to their feet in a standing ovation, not just for the music, but for the courage, the truth, and the profound justice unfolding before their eyes. Randall Thorne stood frozen, his face a mask of utter defeat. His carefully constructed lies had been exposed, his calculated cruelty laid bare, not by legal papers, but by the power of a single woman's music and a son's newfound truth. The paparazzi, sensing the dramatic shift, turned their lenses from Randall to Michael and Ilara, capturing the triumphant moment. In the aftermath, Randall Thorne was swiftly removed from all Sterling Group leadership positions, his career in ruins. Michael Sterling dedicated himself to Harmony Hall, establishing the Evelyn Hayes Arts and Music Conservatory, providing free education and a vibrant cultural hub for Harmony Creek. Ilara became its director, her vision and talent finally given the platform they deserved. Evelyn's house, now fully owned by Ilara, became a quiet testament to her grandmother's enduring spirit. As the sun set over Harmony Creek, bathing the newly restored hall in a golden glow, Ilara sat at the grand piano, its keys now humming with the joy of countless new melodies. Michael, a man finally at peace with his past, sat beside her, listening. The hall was no longer just a building. It was a living, breathing testament to love, loss, and the unbreakable spirit of a community that found its voice through a single, resonant note. The music played on, a symphony of second chances, reminding everyone that even in the face of overwhelming power, the purest truth, like the most heartfelt melody, would always find a way to make itself heard, healing old wounds and weaving new, brighter tapestries of hope. And for Ilara, she knew this was just the beginning of Harmony Creek's enduring song. What an incredible journey we've just shared, listening to Ilara's unwavering spirit bring Harmony Creek back to life. Her story reminds us that even against the most formidable odds, one voice, one truth, one single note can shatter the loudest lies. It's a powerful testament to the idea that our heritage, our art, and the bonds of community are not just sentimental relics, but vital forces worth fighting for. Ilara's courage to uncover the truth, to reclaim Evelyn's legacy, and to face down overwhelming greed shows us that justice often begins with the simplest, most heartfelt acts. It teaches us about the enduring power of love, lost, found, and redeemed, and the profound impact of uncovering the secrets that shape who we are. Harmony Hall isn't just a building. It's a symbol of hope, a reminder that the most beautiful symphonies are often born from the deepest struggles, and that the echoes of truth can heal generations of silent wounds. May we all find the strength to play our own true note, to stand for what's right, and to let our own unique melodies resonate with purpose. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful, meaningful stories that inspire and uplift every day.